Sometimes the smallest voices see the biggest truths. In a crowded restaurant, where everyone looked past a weary waitress, one little girl noticed what no one else did. Her words didn't just change a moment, they changed a life. Stay with me until the end, and if stories of kindness and unseen courage touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Breeze for more. The restaurant buzzed with the sound of clinking glasses, hurried footsteps, and impatient voices. The scent of fried food and coffee lingered in the air, but for the woman weaving between the tables, none of it mattered. She carried herself with quiet steps, almost as though she hoped no one would notice her presence. Her uniform, once crisp and white, was now faded from years of wear. The little notepad she clutched had smudges of ink, and her tired hands trembled slightly each time she scribbled down an order. She kept her eyes down. She had learned long ago that eye contact often led to sharp words, dismissive glances, or the kind of pity she despised. Better to stay invisible, better to stay silent. Customers spoke to her in hurried, clipped tones. More water. This isn't what I ordered. Hurry up, will you? She nodded to each command, swallowing the ache in her throat, forcing a faint smile that never reached her eyes. Every corner of the restaurant echoed with laughter, conversations, and the clatter of cutlery, yet she felt as though she was walking through a storm that no one else could see. Inside her, there was a heaviness, a mixture of exhaustion, shame, and the weight of responsibilities no one around her could possibly understand. Her long shifts blurred into one another, days and nights indistinguishable. She wasn't just serving food, she was fighting a silent war against the despair that threatened to consume her. At one table, a group of office workers laughed loudly, barely glancing at her as they snapped their fingers for service. At another, a couple complained about the delay in their meal, their tone sharp, their words cutting deeper than they knew. Each complaint felt like a stone thrown at her dignity, but she had no shield, no defense. All she could do was bow her head and whisper, "I'm sorry." Her shoes were worn, the soles thin from walking miles across the restaurant floor. The ache in her back had become her constant companion, yet she ignored it, pushing herself because she had no choice. Rent was due. Bills were piling up. There was someone waiting at home who needed her strength, her sacrifice. And so she endured, day after day, minute after minute, smile after forced smile. But beneath her silence, there were unspoken dreams. Once, she had imagined a different life, one filled with laughter, freedom, and the chance to be something more than just a waitress. Life, however, had demanded otherwise, and those dreams had been pushed into the shadows of survival. Still, she carried on. She balanced plates, refilled glasses, and whispered apologies when mistakes happened. Each action was mechanical, almost robotic, but her heart beat painfully in her chest. She didn't see herself as brave or strong. She saw herself as small, invisible, and unworthy, someone who merely existed to serve, someone no one truly noticed. At least, that's what she thought. Until the little girl noticed her. In the corner of the restaurant, away from the noisy crowd, a father sat with his little daughter. He was a quiet man, the kind who observed more than he spoke. His daughter, barely 8 years old, had inherited his silence, but unlike him, she carried a certain light in her eyes, a gentleness that noticed what others ignored. While her father studied the menu, the girl's gaze wandered. She wasn't interested in the chatter of the customers or the laughter bouncing off the walls. Her eyes kept following the woman in the faded uniform, the waitress with the downcast face. The girl tilted her head, watching carefully. She noticed things no one else seemed to see. The woman's hands trembled slightly when she poured water. Her smile, though present, looked like it had been stitched onto her face, fragile and forced. And when customers spoke to her harshly, she flinched, just a little, but quickly recovered as though she had taught herself to hide her pain. The little girl's heart squeezed. Children have a way of sensing truths that adults often miss. To her, the waitress wasn't just another worker moving through the restaurant. She was a story, an untold story of someone carrying invisible burdens. She tugged gently at her father's hand. "Daddy," she whispered softly, her eyes still fixed on the waitress, "why does that lady look so sad?" The father glanced up from the menu, following his daughter's gaze. He looked at the waitress, saw the tired lines on her face, the way she avoided eye contact. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Adults often notice these things, but they choose to brush them aside, hiding behind indifference. His daughter, however, spoke aloud what he himself had silently observed. He sighed. "Maybe, life has been hard for her," he said quietly, unsure how much to explain to a child. "Some people carry heavy struggles we can't see." The girl thought for a moment, then shook her head. "But I can see it, Daddy. She's hurting inside. She's trying to be strong, but she looks like she wants to cry." The father was stunned. Her words were simple, but they pierced through him with an honesty adults rarely allow themselves to feel. He studied his daughter's face, so innocent, yet so perceptive. Children had no masks, no filters. They spoke from the heart. The girl leaned closer to him and whispered again, "She's not weak, Daddy. She's brave. She's smiling, even though she's sad. That's what brave people do, right?" The father's chest tightened. He looked back at the waitress, and suddenly he saw her differently, not just as a tired woman doing her job, but as a fighter, enduring quietly, carrying her pain with grace no one else acknowledged. His eyes grew moist, not just from pity for the woman, but from pride in his daughter, for her compassion, for her ability to see the humanity others overlooked. He placed a gentle hand on her head, whispering, "Yes, sweetheart, you're right. She is brave. Braver than most people here." The little girl smiled softly, her innocent words carrying a weight far beyond her years. And though she didn't realize it yet, her voice was about to touch the heart of the woman who thought no one truly saw her. The waitress approached the father and daughter's table, her hands clutching a small tray. She set down their drinks carefully, her movements slow, as though she feared one small mistake would invite another harsh remark. Her eyes remained fixed on the table, never daring to meet theirs. "Thank you," the father said gently, his voice softer than the others she had heard that day. She gave him the same mechanical smile she offered everyone, then turned slightly to leave. But before she could take a step, a small, innocent voice broke through the noise of the restaurant. "Miss," the little girl said softly. The waitress paused, surprised. Children usually giggled, demanded things loudly, or didn't notice her at all. Slowly, she turned back, unsure what to expect. The girl looked up at her with wide, sincere eyes. "I just wanted to say, you're really brave." The word struck like lightning, not harsh or burning, but warm, so warm it reached a place in her heart she had long forgotten existed. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. "Brave?" she repeated, almost in disbelief. The little girl nodded earnestly. "Yes. Because even when people are mean, you still smile. Even when you're tired, you keep helping. Daddy says brave people don't give up. That's what you're doing. You're not giving up." The waitress felt her throat tighten. She blinked quickly, but a tear escaped anyway, rolling down her cheek. Embarrassed, she turned her face slightly away, whispering, "Sweetheart, I'm just doing my job." But the girl shook her head firmly, her little voice steady. "No. You're doing more than that. You're making sure everyone here is okay. That's important. That's special." The father watched silently, his own heart swelling with emotion. He saw the transformation in the woman's eyes, the disbelief slowly giving way to something fragile but powerful, hope. The waitress pressed a trembling hand against her chest as though trying to steady her heartbeat. For years, she had endured insults, long hours, aching feet, and endless exhaustion. She had taught herself to hide, to accept invisibility as her fate. But this child, this little stranger, had seen her. Not her uniform, not her mistakes, not her exhaustion. Her. She knelt slightly so her eyes were level with the girl's. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Thank you, no one's ever said something like that to me before." The girl smiled softly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Sometimes people don't see the truth. But I do." The father placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder, pride glistening in his eyes. He gave the waitress a kind nod, one that spoke the words he couldn't bring himself to say out loud, "You are seen. You are worthy." For the first time in what felt like forever, the waitress straightened her back not out of duty, but out of dignity. The shame that had weighed her down began to lift, replaced by a spark of strength. That day, it wasn't tips or pay that gave her the courage to keep going, it was the simple, unshaken kindness of a child's heart. And as she walked away from their table, her smile was different. It wasn't forced. It was real.